I am your way out. Don't cry. It's all better now.
We're gonna kill every last one of you.
Welcome back to Vault of Terror, the blood-splattered crypt where we stake the heart of horror cinema, one film at a time. I'm Sean Weathers.
And I'm Angus Cohn. And today we're counting down 6 must-see vampire flicks to sink your teeth into before Sinners hits theaters.
That's right. Whether Sinners turns out to be a blood-soaked masterpiece or just another dried-up corpse, we've got you covered with some truly essential vampire horror to prep your palate.
Before we dive fang first into our list, we want to clarify what this episode is and what it isn't. What this is a list of 6 films that represent vampire horror at its finest, drawing from the deep well of folklore, atmosphere, and existential dread that defines the genre.
What it isn't is a Dracula countdown. So, no Nosferatu, no Blackula, no Christopher Lee rising from the grave in a velvet robe. Dracula movies revolve around a specific character and mythology. We're casting a wider net, focusing on the idea of the vampire itself, not one particular count. For my 3 picks, I had a pretty clear blood trail I wanted to follow. First, I wanted films that were vampire movies first, not just movies that happen to have vampires, but films where vampirism is baked into the DNA. Second, I wanted movies that respected the lore. They didn't need to follow every traditional rule, but they had to establish their own internal logic and stick to it. And finally, I wanted to pick movies that hit me at different points in my life. These aren't just technically great vampire films. They mean something to me, damn it. Depending on your age, you may connect with them differently, but all 3 are worth the bite.
I went on instinct when staking my vampire claims, but I think they all share these simple things. Movies I loved, full stop, that brought me joy and left no doubt in my mind that they were great. Movies that stuck with me, that I've rewatched, thought about, and probably purchased multiple times in different formats to cherish in my collection. And believe me, it was hard to narrow it down. But I believe that all 3 of my picks are worth inviting into your home.
I'm starting off with 1987's The Lost Boys. Now this one hits hardest if you're a little older. It's dripping with 80s attitude, music, and mullets. But even if you're younger, there's still plenty to love here. You get to follow the Coreys, Haim and Feldman, as they basically become teenage vampire hunters. The thing about The Lost Boys is that it doesn't just have vampires, it celebrates them. The lore is front and center. Garlic, mirrors, holy water, all of the old tricks, but updated with motorcycles, sax solos, and a punk goth vibe that made vampirism look both terrifying and cool. It's part coming of age story and part rock and roll nightmare and 100% fun.
My 80s vampire dreams began with Fright Night, 1985, a movie that is so 80s on the surface, but also a loving homage to older vampire movies, made by a self-proclaimed monster kid who grew up watching the classics on TV. In fact, Fright Night is, in part, about a former star of vampire movies, played by Roddy McDowall, who hosts a TV program that shows old horror movies. For any young monster kid just beginning their journey, Fright Night was a true awakening to the possibilities of postmodern self-referential horror, something which has become much more common now, but at the time was groundbreaking. But even if you didn't get any of that stuff, Fright Night still worked as a clever coming-of-age story about a teenager who believes his new neighbor is a vampire. Blending horror and comedy in a way that has rarely been matched, Fright Night was a box office hit, spawning a sequel and a remake, but it's the original that still stands as a true classic of vampire cinema.
Next, I have 1994's Interview with the Vampire. This one is all about moral ambiguity. It doesn't glamorize being a vampire the way so many later movies would. Instead, it forces you to live with the consequences. The loneliness, the regret, the constant violence. Tom Cruise plays Lestat here. And at the time, that casting was highly controversial. Cruise was known for being the charming, clean-cut leading man. Fans of Anne Rice's novel were outraged, thinking he was totally wrong for the role. Even Rice herself initially condemned the choice, until she saw the final film. But it's Brad Pitt's Louis that carries the emotional weight. He hates being a vampire, despises the bloodlust, the immortality, the loss of his soul, yet he can't bring himself to end it. That tension between guilt and survival is what makes his character so tragic. And beneath the blood and velvet, the film dives into some heavy themes. Repressed homosexual desires, addiction, grief, alienation. It treats them with real emotional depth, not just gothic window dressing. This isn't a movie about monsters. It's a movie about what it means to keep living like one.
Definitely not for kids. George A. Romero's Martin, 1977, is a vampire movie like no other. After literally inventing the modern zombie film with Night of the Living Dead, Romero had trouble repeating his success. Martin was his fifth feature, and it's a low-budget independent affair, much less slick and polished than the other films on this list. But that makes it feel all the more real, almost like a docudrama at times. And much like he had done with zombies, Romero came up with a completely new take on vampires. Martin is about a man who believes he's a vampire and behaves as if he's a vampire. But is he really? It's as much a deep character study as it is a horror film. And it may be the movie that bridges the gap between old-school gothic vampires and more modern, misunderstood, tortured vampires. Romero has referred to Martin as his favorite of his films. It was also his first collaboration with special effects wizard Tom Savini, so the blood and gore is as shocking today as it was then. And while it did not really attract a slew of imitators, it's become a bona fide cult classic, with fans all over the world. Anyone interested in vampires who aren't just monsters, but complex characters with problems, definitely must see Martin. The script is smart, the characters are believable, and the story is at times moving, powerful, and absolutely chilling.
And finally, not just my favorite vampire film of all time, one of my favorite horror movies of all time, maybe even one of my favorite films, period. 2008's Let the Right One In. Now I get it, it's a low-budget Swedish film with subtitles. That alone will turn most of you off. But if you let that stop you, you're missing out on something truly special. This isn't just a vampire movie that checks off the tropes. It's a film that lives inside of the mythology. The rules are there. Sunlight, blood, the need to be invited. But they're never used for spectacle. They're woven into the fabric of the story, treated with quiet reverence that makes them feel ancient and real. And at the heart of it is this fragile, painful connection between two outsiders. Oscar, a lonely bullied boy, and Ellie, a mysterious girl who moves in next door, who isn't really a girl at all. Their bond is built on silence, vulnerability, and shared trauma. It's a love story, but not in a traditional sense. It's about companionship as survival. About needing someone who sees you, even if there's something not quite human. There's this haunting stillness to the film. The snow-covered landscapes, the silence between words, the way violence erupts suddenly without glamour. It respects the horror of what Ellie is without reducing her to a monster. It seeps in quietly, then stays lodged in the corner of your mind. It's thoughtful, tragic, strangely tender, and for me, it represents the very best of what vampire cinema can be.
Salem's Lot, 1979, is an adaptation of the popular Stephen King novel, directed by Tobe Hooper, famous for his groundbreaking movie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Unlike that film, which rated a hard R or perhaps even an X, Salem's Lot was made for television and was more PG. Even so, Salem's Lot scared the crap out of a generation of kids who stayed up to watch it, and they never forgot it. It became an instant cult classic and influenced countless future films, including 2 on our list, Fright Night and The Lost Boys. Much like the new movie Sinners, Salem's Lot focuses on a character returning to his hometown after a period of time, only to discover that something evil is there waiting for him. Spoiler alert, it's vampires. In a departure from the novel, the movie portrays the main vampire as a kind of homage to Count Orlok from Nosferatu. This may have given hardcore Stephen King fans pause, but the decision to produce the film as a TV miniseries meant that Hooper was able to retain most of what made King's original novel great. The result is a genuinely scary movie that doesn't rely on violence or gore to get results. It spawned a sequel and a big-budget theatrical remake in 2024. But true vampire fans who want to see an epic story well told should definitely check out the original.
There you have it. 6 vampire films that actually understand what makes the genre tick. From coming-of-age thrill rides to existential dread. There's something here for every type of horror fan. But don't take our word for it. Check them out and see what bites you.
What are your go-to vampire flicks? Drop them in the comments and let's get that coffin conversation going. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another deep dive from the Vault of Terror. Until next time, stay spooky.